Hi there. I did a talk about 12 to 18 months ago about broad and deep agility in huge organizations where there's a lot of pressure for the company to be more adaptive. And what I want to talk about today is what about, let's say you're an executive or you're a change agent and you're working in a function and you've been kind of charged with ensuring that agility would be rolled out to support the adaptiveness of the organization. Now, you probably can tell from my accent that I'm Irish, and one of the things that happens when you're in Ireland, if you get lost somewhere in the countryside and you say, I need to go to X, someone might say to you, well, I wouldn't start here. And it's kind of like that as well with starting agility within a function. It's not really the right place to start. There's another very annoying expression in England as well. Well, we are where we are, so well, we are where we are. So, what if you had a situation where you were in a function, and we do need to adapt, but the expectation is that agility goes down within your function. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm just going to share. Poster with you, and the first thing I just want to draw your attention to would be the kind of the cartoon image at the top left corner. It's about trust, and this image was from one of the presentations by John Cutler, and I really like this image because it kind of illustrates that when people don't trust each other, we have all sorts of meetings and decision points, but it's not really the way to go. It's better that we actually trust, and in fact, trust should be given as an executive leader. You need to give trust, and of course, you verify. When people actually are doing things, but trust being acquired, being earned, doesn't really kind of go well. So trust should be given, and then teams, we need to verify that they just continue to deserve that trust, I guess. And I think really agility is about increasing trust. One of the 5 dysfunctions of a team from Patrick Lencioni's book is the lack of trust. And if you don't have trust, it's kind of the bottom of the pyramid. If you don't have that, you're kind of goose. So first thing we need to fix is trust. So what I want to talk about to get us started is, how do we get this going? And so there can be a temptation to set up like what I call a parallel universe within your organization. So let's say you're in marketing, for example, and you want to set up these new teams, and they want to work in this new way, and they will be using some kind of an agile method or some kind of framework. In this case, the team here is using Kanban. They've got a WIP limit of 2 in their doing column, and their to do is essentially what they've committed to finish with the customer, not what they've committed to start, what they've committed to finish. Different thinking approach, and the idea is they're just the backlog and so on. And so what kind of people would we have in those teams? So I suggest that you go on a very aggressive recruitment campaign, aggressive in a nice way, looking for people who really want to try this. People who understand that if you continue to deal with complexity as though it's predictable, that's kind of like a freight train to chaos. And people who kind of understand that things are a little bit fluid sometimes, particularly when there's a lot of collaboration and cooperation required. So if you think that we need to do lots of handovers, you're probably not a good candidate for this kind of a team, at least not yet. So you really be looking for people who are comfortable with uncertainty, comfortable with not so much clarity on roles. It's more about as a team of teams, how do we deliver lots of good stuff together. So what I like to do is use volunteering, where we advertise positions, and those positions will be applied for. Anyone who applies that has a closed mindset would be filtered out of that. We really only want people with an open mindset, people who are willing to learn, people who can deal with uncertainty and maybe thrive on uncertainty, as opposed to expecting everything to be predictable and clear, which is really not the right way. A lot of people think, well, don't we need to know where we're going before we hire this team? Well, the company in this case would already have decided that they want to be adaptive, and they decided in error to deploy agility in each function, which isn't a good start, as we said earlier. So what we do is we look for people who are really keen to try this out, and and then hopefully that builds some energy, and by people who want to do this joining this team, maybe that helps them to be successful. They obviously need to have a good structure. They need to be well launched, all that kind of good stuff. But if you start with people who get the right people on the bus, as I said in that book, wasn't it, Good to Great, and get the right people in the right seats in the bus, and the right person driving the bus, that's probably where I would start. I would not go with a diktat of telling people, you will on Monday morning you will do agile, because what will happen is they'll find a way to play that game to the minimum, and then a lot of other people will play it to that low standard, and that's really not a good way to start. Something that a lot of people don't understand when you're engaging with agile teams is that there's not a handover to an agile team. There's a lot more collaboration, a lot more cooperation needed. So if you think you can just slide your work off my table and push it onto someone else's table, that's not really what we're about here. It's about how do we work together? How do we get some deep agility within teams? And it's not just about depth either. It's also about breadth. How do we collaborate not just with the existing teams but also with the other functions? Because really, if each function, like marketing in this case, for example, gets really agile, that'll have limited benefits unless all the functions across the organization are working well together as well. So we do need to find a way to make that happen. I included a few links here on the document. One of them is BMW autonomous driving. That's a public link to a LinkedIn post with a YouTube video on the use of large-scale Scrum in BMW. And as this is kind of aimed at people in marketing, but it could be used for anything. But I've got some marketing examples. So thank you for the people who've been helping me to find these in the last few days. So an example from Tableau, from Bose, and a company previously known as HomeAway. So there's some podcast links there where people have demonstrated use of agility in marketing. But you could do this for whichever function you're in, legal or HR, whatever your departments are. So we talked about the new teams, but what about the existing teams? I think it's a good idea, even though people in existing teams might still be dubious about cognitive diversity. They might think, actually, that might sound strange to say that, but they might think that we always need to have the experts on the problem. Having the experts isn't always the right idea, particularly in the complex space. I have another video, Why Agility, on my channel as well, so check that out. There's some links to the Cynefin framework, and to check out those videos. But when you're in the complex space, you can, if you rely on experts too much, you might not see the solutions. You might need some fresh thinking. If the people are still uncomfortable with uncertainty, but they're still willing to be more engaged, they're still willing to collaborate, cooperate, and they're basically they'd like to give it a go, then maybe you could start using some visual management with these teams. You can see here on this board, it looks like a Kanban board, but it's not, because it's got an infinite work in progress limit there in the doing column. So this team is just visualizing how they are. I prefer to see some WIP limits here, or maybe using some method like Scrum or something like that. But remember, this is, some of the existing teams might not be ready yet, so they're just not ready for Scrum or something like that. So basically, what they're doing is they're trying to swarm and suck it and see, well, is there some benefit in this? Whether it's new or existing teams, I often get asked, how do we measure? I think we need to make the measurement as broad as possible, not just down to individual teams. As agility is about designing the organization for the customer, success maybe could be measured by the number of inspired people, employees, people in the supply chain, consumers, the markets themselves, and it's kind of difficult to do that. There are tools from Cognitive Edge that help. You can also capture inspirational stories, feedback from clients, and just kind of capture all of those, and that'll give you a sense of where we're going. Of course, if you just do agility at team level, it's not really going to give you major benefits. You do need to be having collaboration, not just between existing and new teams, but also across functions. So I'm hoping that within each function, at least, you'd have some kind of portfolio where you're managing the work items at a kind of lower level of granularity. So the initiatives that are going on across your function, and across multiple functions. I would hope actually that you'd be kind of sticking tentacles into the other functions, because we're not really going to achieve agility until we collaborate and cooperate with whoever is needed in order to deliver the value for your company. A lot of people look for role clarity, and it kind of drives me nuts. So they're looking for clear roles and responsibilities and all this kind of thing. It kind of gives me an indication that people are in the wrong space, and they're probably not the people I'd want to have in the new teams. But there might be some people in the existing teams, so we need to work with them that actually, if anything, I'm not even sure the team clarity is a good thing, but at least having clarity at a team level or an individual level would be a bit of a stepwise improvement away from thinking that everything is understood. And sometimes things are messy in life and a bit more fluid, and so we need to consider that. So what I want to do now is I want to deal with the so what with this. So what's the journey here? So I have more content on this as well, and so essentially there's a journey that we all need to go on, right? So how do you go on that journey? So I have an example here of a 3-month target condition. You'll see people who are familiar with AutoCAD will probably see that. So for my organization, whichever your organization is, which needs value discovery and delivery, the new teams would have, for example, I just made up this number, 10 open-minded volunteers who requested to be part of this. They weren't voluntold, and basically the competitive advantage, they've been launched, they've had their first sprints, say if they're using Scrum or even Kanban with sprints, and they have good learnings from the first retro. I love referring to Mike Tyson's quote here: everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And so we do need to be empirical. We do need to embrace uncertainty ourselves. We need to, so you can't have a Gantt chart for rolling out agility, for example. I think it's quite funny when I see those, but they're more popular than you might think. So that's a 3-month target condition. I find that people work in different time horizons. I love what Dave Stone said last week on a webinar. He said that direction of travel is that you've got a direction and you've got a speed. And you're going at the right speed and you're going in the right direction. So I guess these need a bit of work to kind of tie in with that, because I still have a 6 to 9 month target condition. So for example, going beyond 3 months, which still needs a delivery hub, the new team has 20 inspired people instead of 10, and they now have a value focus. They've kind of moved over from project thinking on time, on budget, and they're now thinking, oh, the market gave us a great response, that was really fabulous. And there's one executive product owner for using Scrum. In Scrum we don't have a product owner per team. I did a separate talk on that. If you want to check that out, what is less friendly Scrum, I got 2 videos on that on my channel. So that would be a 6 to 9 month step, if you like. And remember the Mike Tyson quote, so this is called change. And then I refer to kind of getting to the moon. I find if I refer to the planets and so on, it kind of helps people. So from our organization, which needs thriving value-oriented ways of working, my organization has deep pockets of change. Change in pockets of my organization, with value being delivered via long-term stable teams or well-executed dynamic reteaming. There's a link for that as well. I'll share the file. That uses they use empiricism there, so they're learning based on evidence, and there's exponential momentum in terms of the growth of adaptiveness. So not the whole organization is agile, adaptive. It's there's deep pockets, and there's enough deep pockets that are connected to each other as well, so that it's not just about marketing being agile. It's about marketing and HR and legal and however other functions together as an organization. We're getting better. The competitive advantage here would be seeing green shoots of increased performance based on market feedback. And in this case, I'm saying I'm a big fan of large-scale Scrum, because you're designing the organization towards the customer when using large-scale Scrum. So it's oriented towards learning and evidence building and experimentation. And unlike basic visual management or just agility in name only. So this is something I'd really try to avoid. To be very careful about going too broad with your agility, and then you're losing your depth. I also have that North Star, or sometimes they refer to it as Mars. So like a 5+ years almost impossible perfection vision. It's just a direction. We might never get there. It's almost impossible. From our organization, which needs thriving value-oriented ways of working, is deep change right across the organization, with 100% of value being delivered via long-term stable teams that use empiricism, They might be using 20% time, might be using the hackathons to discover innovation, and there's exponential growth of learning and safe to fail experimentation. Unlike copy and paste agility, just copying the way someone else did it, competitive advantage would be competing better on the outside, to the extent that we have a multiple times improvement in competition on the outside from the market perspective, because we've got an organization in the space maybe on something like less huge, particularly if you got like, tens and tens of teams. So I just wanted you to be aware of some of the starting points that can be difficult. If you might be an executive in a function, you might be a change agent in a function, and it's not really a place to start. It's just the start of a journey. You have to start somewhere. You just need to be thinking, okay, we need to get deep growth. But we also need breadth. We need to connect into the other functions as well, so overall the organization gets better. And I'm a much bigger fan of volunteering and recruiting people who are really keen, without permission from managers from the other teams. Just whoever wants to apply applies, and then of course that needs to be managed internally in terms of maybe some people who are in existing teams. Maybe the managers don't want to lose them or whatever. But that's another discussion. But try to get people who are really keen to apply for these roles, and try to build some momentum so that you get some really positive inspirational energy, where we get really deep agility, and you get the opposite of apathy, the opposite of copy and paste, something that's truly inspiring and competitive. I hope you found this useful. If you've got any questions, just add some into the comment section of this video, and I'll respond to every single comment. Thank you so much.